Testing, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Good morning. Welcome to the 2022 annual meeting. I'm Amy Troffenbaum, this year's POA Board President. Can I get a show of hands of anybody who's attending their first annual meeting? Wow. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that, especially on this morning. It's a momentous occasion as we conclude the first half century of this wonderful community. I want to thank the chapel for letting us use their facilities for this meeting and the town hall earlier this year. We really appreciate that. The program will be recorded and put up on our website, I guess, early in the week, or as soon as possible. Please silence your cell phones, as always. After we get done, we'll open up to Q&A, and we'll have board members circulating with microphones. This is our agenda for today. We have one little change at the bottom, but we're going to work through that. Our Geosyntec rep is unable to be here. He will be virtual, so I won't have to do that part, or you won't have to do that part. It's the usual topics, very similar to last year. And the annual meeting is now called to order. The accounting firm of Malden and Jenkins certified that we did meet quorum to have this meeting, so we'll now proceed with the program. As you were coming in today, you couldn't help but notice all the great shots of the events we had all throughout the year. I want to extend a huge, sincere thanks to Ellen Sheridan and Susan Wilson and the entire 50th Anniversary Committee for all the work they did this year. It was just an enormous celebration. Thank you. Are you all here? Job well done. Introductions for who's with us today. From Dawson County, we have Sharon Fawcett. She's our outgoing commissioner. She's retiring after having served our community for 8 years. Thank you, Sharon. Yes, you've been a great friend to Big Canoe. She was the only county official or dignitary that was able to come today. We'll try to get the rest of them next time, but thank you so much for doing that. Our elected board members, I think everybody's over here. Candace Robertson, treasurer and last year's president. Tim Moran, secretary. Regis Falinsky. Bob Littell. Elton Gogolin. I'm getting to you. Also staff, we have senior staff. Carrie Scott is over here, Director of Amenities. Lydell Mack, Director of Operations. Kathy Jones, our HR expert. Jane Hagan, Director of Finance. Who else is in our... And Mark Delavina and Kat Dye, who put all this together. They just did an incredible job. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do for us all throughout the year. And the developer director for this year, Mike Ziegler, will repeat, so we'll welcome him again this year. Mike's sitting over here. And now, why you all came. But not quite yet. So we met the quorum to have the meeting, and we also have, we want to point out how many votes we have total. It's 6104. The total to reach a 35% quorum is, can't read that number, 2136, sorry. So this year for the elections, we had 50% of all total eligible votes were cast. Quorum was obviously met. That translated into 50% of people with homes voted, and 31% who own lots voted. This is pretty typical when you look through the years at many things. This is just how it seems to go. And our raffle winner, Ann Pike, lot 7007. Ann, are you here? No? Well, congratulations. Thank you all who voted for voting. Our two new elected directors for 2023 are Mark Green and Terry Stewart. Mark, Terry. Congratulations, guys. And thanks really to everybody who ran. We had 4 very qualified candidates for the general election. And it was a long year, I know, for everybody, for the election committee and for the candidates. And thank you for hanging in there. And thank you to the voters for taking the time to become informed and make your choices. So we really, really appreciate that. Immediately after today's program, I like to say we're going to go into sequestration and we'll nominate our officers for next year. The results will be sent out later today, but you know they're coming when you see the puff of white smoke that comes out of the POA lodge. Hope y'all can see that. The other issue on the ballot this year was the lease administration fee. It required a 50% plus 1 of votes cast if you met the quorum, which we did, and the amendment passed 58% to 42%. So because of this, the standing $25 in Rule A14 will be stricken. That was a promise, and just want to let you know that's what we're going to do. I love that slide. I think you took that slide, didn't you? I think you did. Okay, I just want to go through this very briefly. Last year, the board adopted the strategic plan process that had been developed all throughout 2021. It produced our mission, vision, and values statements, which several of us have talked about, and Regis will also address this a little bit later. Our mission is to provide a residential community with a high quality of life in harmony with nature. Our vision is to be a safe and secure residential community, providing the harmonious integration of the natural beauty of the mountains with high quality amenities along with well-maintained and updated infrastructure. That's a mouthful. And our values, we want to be inclusive, do the right thing, be open and candid as possible, treat everyone with respect, value input, and honor our natural resources. A large driver of the plan was the Voice of the Community survey conducted in the summer of 2021. From there, we adopted 5 high-level strategic objectives focusing on our assets, safety, security, governance, employees, and the property owner experience. These are overall organizational goals, and they flow down to the board and to Scott and his direct reports through their annual plans, and includes a master plan. Regis is going to talk a little bit about that when I'm done with the next section. So earlier this year, the board selected 6 goals for us to concentrate on. They support 1 or more of each of the high-level objectives. We gave a mid-year report in July at the town hall, and we give periodic reports throughout the year at the various board meetings. So this shouldn't be too new for you. So I'm going to go through the first 4, and then I'll turn it over to Regis. Secure long-term access to capital. With the number of amenity and infrastructure projects we're going to be facing here, 50-year-old community, we knew it was going to be a great benefit to have ready access to funds. So in the fall of 2021, the Finance Committee reviewed the results of the Voice of the Community survey and recognized the majority of the property owners wanted to maintain our infrastructure, upgrade the amenities, and the majority were not opposed to borrowing to do that. They formed a subcommittee of subject matter experts. That was Bill Thurber, Jean Morgia, Jane Hagan, and Candace Robertson from the board. These are all people steeped in financials, banking. Bill was a CFO, so we had a lot of expertise in that group. They began discussions with 6 lending institutions and subsequently were negotiating with 3. The results of those efforts were reported in a very lengthy board meeting earlier this year and in a Smoke Signals article where you can read all the details. The board ultimately voted to move forward, and we closed on this facility in May. Under the arrangement, we refinanced our existing long-term debt, which matures in April of 2026, and we're paying it on the original amortization schedule. We renewed the revolving $3 million line of credit. We've had it since 2016, nothing new. And we have a commitment from them to do equipment financing for projects like the fire engine, which we just financed for 5 years under a loan. But most importantly, and the real reason we did this, was we gained access to draw up to $15 million until May of 2025. This is under a variable revolving term, and it converts, and this was the key thing, it converts to a fixed rate of 3.46% for 15 years in May of 2025. So the key is, if we need this to do these projects that we want to proceed with, we need to get on with it, make the decisions, and we will deal with that by the time we get to May of 2025. So we're in a good spot, we're ready to go, and we can get these things done. And many, many thanks to the subcommittee and Candace in particular for leading that. You were looking out for Big Canoe. As we've talked about throughout the year, there were a number of inconsistencies in what we call the service level and operating agreement with URG, our water and sewer provider. Our goal was to establish a clear and defined formula consistent with industry standards and address the impact of potentially providing service to customers outside Big Canoe. In anticipation of all this, earlier this year we retained counsel specializing in public and privately owned water and sewer issues. The board authorized mediation with a third-party professional organization, and we actually proceeded to that mediation on September 26. Discussions continued, and subsequent to that, our counsel was contacted by opposing counsel regarding a comprehensive proposal from the POA in an effort for both parties to avoid protracted and costly litigation. The objective is to settle the issues on water and sewer rate calculations, provide assurances to the community that any proposed water and sewer outside Big Canoe would not result in Big Canoe property owners bearing costs of expansion and would not affect UIG's current or future capacity to serve owners that become part of Big Canoe. The POA Water Committee compiled the major negotiation points, and the board just distilled and prioritized this. It's now been submitted to council to proceed with negotiations, and the goal is to wrap this up, if at all possible, by the end of this year. So we'll keep you posted. It's been a very long process. The Water Committee, names are listed here. They've just really put in a lot of work on all this, so we really, really appreciate all that. I don't know if you can see the top of that. Reduce property owner concerns over leased property. Earlier this year, we noted in the Voice of the Community survey that it captured that most property owners don't want Big Canoe to become a resort, and the majority were interested in placing some sort of restrictions on rentals. At the time, we didn't know what that looked like, so we had to take some time and explore, and that's what we did. We dove in, looked at the options to ensure we could never become predominantly non-owner occupied, and ultimately decided to focus on a percentage cap of all homes as the best solution. Although we'd said on numerous occasions this would require several significant steps, legal steps that we would have to take, and we did not know if this would be able to come to pass. Rental property at some level is important to Big Canoe, partly due because of our somewhat remote location from other accommodations. So we need to find a way to make this work. Some of the tactical steps we took along the way were, and this is not the reason we did it, but it is a side benefit of it. We added an additional 4th FTE in public safety. That means 3 people. And this has allowed us to have the additional resources to enforce the rules that are in the books. We hear complaints from a lot of people. We just start enforcing the rules. Well, we really do, and you're going to see some interesting stats here a little later in the presentation. But we can't be the eye in the sky. We can't be everywhere. So we really rely on you all. When you see legitimate issues, you have to call them in contemporaneously, and we will go out and enforce those rules. So please be assured of that. We also published the monthly public safety dashboard, and you're going to see the granddaddy of them all here for the year to date pretty soon. Scott talks about this every month in the monthly board meetings. In 2021, we had a committee review all of the bylaws and the rules, and we brought the rules forward in earlier 2022, tried to update them, make them more relevant, take out the ones that couldn't be enforced and put in ones that needed to be enforced, trying to make this a little bit tighter. And we also devoted a lot of staff time and dollars printing and distributing visitor guides that's handed out to the gate. This has all the important rules, all the things you need to know when you're visiting Big Canoe. We've given out, I think, about 10,000 this year so far. Early this year, we attempted to work in collaboration with an existing rental group, but ultimately needed to initiate a different group, which was shepherded by Bob Littell. Meg Rooney stepped up to lead this group, and it's now known as RAG, Rental Advisory Group. And depending on the topics to be covered at each meeting, various members of the POA staff and board, and sometimes both, are in attendance in these meetings. So it's not a committee of the board, and the POA doesn't run this organization, but we are there to assist with the communications within the community and other processes changes when that makes sense. The end goal, and I'm stealing Meg's line, the end goal is for property owners in general to be at peace with the rental community and the rental community to be more cognizant of the rest of the property owner community. As the year went on, it became apparent the roadblocks to submitting our declaration to the Georgia POA Act and ultimately passing the legal and meaningful restrictions on use of leased property could not be overcome. So we looked at what we could do, which is to defray costs of the POA associated with leased property that is borne by all property owners. This was a continuation of what the board did from 4 years ago. They knew that needed to be done, only in this time it was in the form of an enforceable amendment, which just passed. Perhaps down the road, the roadblocks will be removed and we will be able to take another look at what we can do to achieve the original goal, but we are unable to do that at this time. We wanted to increase property owner participation in recruiting the board, and we also needed to get an orientation program together for new board members. So with the help of our very energetic and involved election committee, we were fortunate enough to field 5 qualified candidates for the primary. This triggered the primary result in September, narrowing it down to 4, and we just announced our 2 for today for next year. In addition to the many private meet and greets around the community, the POA held meet and greets, candidate videos, Q&A forums, and the popular fireside chat video with Bob Crouch. We may have to recruit him to do this again. Much credit goes to the election committee, whose members are listed here. Really appreciate all of your work and the candidates. It was a long year. Several of us on the board have put together some materials leading to a new board member orientation program. It'll get underway, golly, day after tomorrow, and for two days the following week. It's the first time we've done this. We'll see how it goes. So, guys, get ready for the postgraduate program. I'm going to turn it over to Regis now. He's going to finish up the last two sections, and then we'll move on in the agenda.
Okay, I will be talking about the master plan, which was one of our development of a master plan in support of the strategic plan, which was developed last year, was one of our objectives, board objectives for this year, and I'm going to talk to you about where we stand on this. Oops. Which one? Okay, you've just seen this slide, and there seems a little bit of confusion as to the difference or distinction between the master plan and the strategic plan. And this slide kind of shows the relationship. Amy already went through it once. To use a little bit of corporate speak, the strategic planning and implementation process is a top-down, bottom-up process, and that's what's shown here. The voice of the community was used to develop the vision statement. The vision statement is our goal, our big, overall, overarching community goal for our community. In turn, we developed high-level strategic objectives, which flowed down from the vision statement. And in turn, those high-level strategic objectives support the vision statement. They flow down to support board goals, GM goals, and the master plan, which in turn flow up to support the high-level strategic objectives and all the way back to the voice of the community. Okay, so what is a master plan? It's a long-term plan that considers all of the elements of our existing, all of our existing facilities, and identifies the actions required to ensure that these facilities meet current and future needs and wants. I stress wants as well as needs of our community. So, number of attributes, it's comprehensive. We looked at pretty much all of our assets and all our facilities. It's integrated. It came very clear early on in this process is that all these pieces need to fit together. You can't do something to the clubhouse without having an effect on one of our other facilities with things like meeting rooms or what have you. So it's integrated. It has to fit together. It's visual. When this plan is presented to you, in a few weeks, you will see it's something you can look at. You can see exactly what we're planning on, what we would like to do, we're planning on doing. It's flexible. It has to be. It's a plan. Like any plan, budget, or forecast, it's pretty much obsolete the day after it's printed. So it has to be flexible in order to take into consideration the obvious changes that are going to occur. Actionable, it's not a plan that just sits there. It is something that prescribes specific actions. The board knows what it needs to do. Scott and his team know what they need to do to bring this, to execute this plan. And finally, as I've said before, it supports the Big Canoe vision statement. So, what's the process we've gone through? First of all, we don't get anything done here without forming a committee. So we formed a committee, not as easy as it sounds, for reasons I won't get into today. The Long Range Planning Committee, for the last 3 or 4 years, through no fault of their own, have been kind of caught up in this kind of they've had a hard time establishing traction I attribute that primarily to the fact that they were trying to develop a master plan without a strategic plan that identified what our community's goals were. So that's why the strategic plan had to be put in place before this committee could become effective. Secondly, we had to define the work scope and the goals of this committee. Again, that sounds easy. It was difficult. We probably took the first 4 to 6 weeks of this committee meetings to establish exactly what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish, how we'd go about doing it, and what the end work product would look like. We performed a needs assessment. What we have, we did a thorough, I shouldn't say we, the committee, I was just the liaison to that, did a thorough evaluation of pretty much all our amenities and other assets. Benchmark in terms of physical condition, suitability of purpose, things of that nature. What we have versus what we want or what we need. So that was done. Once we established that, we hired a consultant. These are experts. It consisted of an architect, a city planner, and a civil engineer to help us take this to identify or to help to take it from what we have to what we need or want. So they were very instrumental in accomplishing that, and you will see their work product when the plan is presented. Established priorities. The committee did a great job of that, largely based on the voice of the community survey that was done last year. It's going to cost a lot of money. This is a big plan. It's an exciting plan, but it's also a very expensive plan. So working with the architect, the engineer, and the city planner, there were cost estimates developed. In some cases, we did get input from a builder to help us fine-tune these costs. With the help of Jane and the Finance Committee, we developed cash flow projections. The committee presented their findings and recommendations to the board, and that's kind of where we stand now. So the good news is a master plan has been, a draft master plan has been completed. It's been submitted to the board. So what has to happen next? Number one, we've got 2 new board members that this committee, to use a football analogy, took this master planning project from, say, our own 20 deep into the red zone. So we're not over the goal line yet, but we're close, and it's going to be up to the board next year, including the new board members, to bring this home. So it has to be presented to the new board members. We need to get their buy-in. There will be a property owner presentation that will take place sometime after the clubhouse reopens in January. Shortly, I shouldn't say sometimes, I should say shortly after the clubhouse reopens in January. We are then going to gather community input. We will have focus groups, possibly a community survey, but this is going to be your plan. We developed it, again, based on survey results, what we think, based on those surveys, that the community wants, but we will welcome your input into before we finalize and approve this plan. If required, we'll revise this master plan. The board will approve it, and then the hard part comes that most of these projects, by their very nature, are, as I mentioned before, very costly, and they will require property owner approval to move forward on. So that's going to be crossing the goal line when we get that property owner approval. So that's what needs to be done. And in closing, I would just like to thank this committee, Joe Thompson, Mike Trinkle, Cecil Schneider, Gay Abbott, Shane Hornbuckle, Deneen Morgia, Bob Baird, Amy Walker, Brian Galloway, and Bob White. I'd like to offer special thanks to Mike Trinkle, who is sitting there in the corner, who led this committee, and the three holdovers from the previous long-range planning, Cecil Snyder, Gay Abbott, and Joe Thompson. They have gone and endured a lot of frustration in trying to bring this about, and they endured, they stuck it out, and the committee certainly couldn't advance to where we are without their input. So in principle, finally, in principle, we endorse the findings of the plan, and we very much look forward to presenting it to the community sometime in January. So thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Does it work? Good morning. Thank you guys for coming. You could have been sitting on a couch with your significant other, a glass of wine, I don't know, next Wednesday night or something, watching this, but you're here, which is awesome. Thank you very much. We watched the weather all week and weren't sure what was going to happen with that. So, you've seen this a couple times. We'll just, it doesn't hurt to memorize it. There will be a test later. There's 5 high-level strategic objectives. Focus on amenities in our infrastructure, focus on safety and security of Big Canoe, work on our governance, better communications, as much transparency as we can possibly do, attract and motivate and retain very talented employees. Without the employees, this place gets really quiet really fast. And make sure that we focus every day on our hospitality and trying to enhance the guest experience. So I'm going to do a little rewind for you on the last 12 months and how we did various things to hit each of those objectives. So starting with amenities and infrastructure, I love that picture because that's not what it looked like in the summer of 2021. You might remember that. So first thing we did this year is we tackled the postal facility. We said, well, long-range planning committee is just getting formed. They got a huge job in front of them. In the meantime, we've got a postal facility. It's kind of got a slalom course associated with it every day, and it's not terribly safe. And so back to safety and security and also property owner experience, we did some things to fix that. So some new pavement, new guardrails, stop blocks so you don't go down the side and turn your slalom course into a downhill ski run. That's really bad when that happens. All new timbers, got rid of the rotting timbers and things like that. Are we done? We're not done. So one of the key things, probably the number one project, I think, that came out of the strategic planning survey way back was the community was not happy with our postal setup. You'll see in the master plan that the first project that's being teed up and addressed is a new postal facility. Just giving you a little hint, it ties in really nicely with the package porch, so it stays in the village core and it makes it so you only get out of your car one time. So stay tuned. There'll be a really great presentation, I think, in, 3 or 4 weeks to show you the entire master plan. But for now, we're a lot safer than when we started the year. Second thing, Creek 9, this seems like centuries ago to me, but there was a really cold day there in March or April when we opened the course. If you look at those people, I think everybody except Lydell, I think Lydell is thinking about, I wish I was teeing off right now, because he's kind of looking somewhere else, but everybody else is looking at that ribbon. Big deal. That course was in terrible shape. You couldn't tell from the top, but underneath it looked pretty sad, held together by bubble gum in the case of our sprinkler systems. And so basically we hit it. We did it on time, on budget, $2.33 million. Many people tell me it's their favorite course. And then quickly after that, they say, and when are we doing the next 2? So that's part of the master plan presentation also. So they're in the works. We're going to start working on that again with Bill Bergen as the designer in 2023 and get ready for the next renovation, which needs to be Choctaw. Trash facilities. Hard to think of a trash facility as sort of a sexy thing, but our trash facility was looking pretty poor also, and also there were some safety issues. We had a nasty accident out there early in the spring. People pulled up too close, people back up, and cars are coming by. So we did a few things. We got rid of all kinds of signage, which sort of looked like NASCAR. It started out good, but what happens is signs go up, signs go up, signs go up, nothing ever comes down, and it sort of, looked a little bit like a raceway, so we took care of that. And then added a passing lane, basically a pull-out lane, so there was more space to get by, and made sure that there's a no parking area so that people are a little bit safer as they go by. Got rid of all that beat-up lattice and stuff. So that looks a little bit more Big Canoe-ish and the level we want to get to as a community everywhere, even though it's a trash facility. It should look and work better, and now it does. Next thing, I love these facts. Roads, these are our favorite things in Big Canoe. We have a lot of them. There's 88 miles of them. They're a bit twisty and turny at times. And so we put down 12,200 reflectors, which I love. It's terrific. Chris Stanzel's not here today. He wanted to be here today, but he had a prior thing at a food co-op, so that was a pretty good excuse, I thought. But he said, "I'm sorry, I'm not here." But I really miss the reflectors as you come up on Yellow Creek, and now I don't miss the reflectors here. It's terrific. So 1,600 gallons of paint used on restriping every single road in Big Canoe this year. We did that. 9,000 pounds of reflective beads go into those road stripes. They're not just paint. They actually have reflective beads built into them. 4,763 tons of asphalt this year to pave, and we're now up to 73% of our roads are in either good or great condition. When we started that journey under Bob Crouch's leadership long ago and far away, I think it was something like 15% of our roads were in good condition. So they've come a long, long way. And 215,370 square feet of rejuvenation. That's something we put down on the roads that we're not paving to help the asphalt binder last longer, so therefore we get more use out of the roads. Culverts. This is a little like the road story. So long ago, we didn't have any kind of a condition plan for assessing the condition of every road, figuring out when it was going to be repaved, all that. We have a very comprehensive plan now every single year. We go out and we ride all the roads with an expert. We look at it. We figure out which roads are being paved next year, etc. Culverts had been largely neglected for every bit of 50 years. So I hate to say it, we didn't even know where the culverts were. Would you believe that we're a 50-year-old community and we don't have as-built drawings for most of this place? Because they used to use slide rules and vellum and paper. These were not digital assets in 1972, right? Nobody knew what that meant. So we went out and found them, basically. So we literally went out, found and located and put on GIS coordinates where every single culvert is, figured out what condition it was in, and then Lydell and his team put together a plan to say, over the next 5 years, what do we need to do first? Which ones are in the worst shape? What do we need to deal with? Do we have crumbling head walls? Are the culverts clear? Does the pipe need replaced? Does the pipe need slip line? All of that kind of stuff. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about culverts, because if the culverts don't work, then the drainage doesn't work. If the drainage doesn't work, then all that mud and all that great stuff every time it rains goes right into our driveways. Not very much fun. So culverts are rather important. Not too sexy, but rather important. Marina seawall. This was probably has become, I think, the favorite project of the year. On the left, you see what that scary seawall sort of looked like this time last year. There were gaps in it and things were a little askew. And you look over on the right now, upper right, that is the beautiful marina situation. We are well set now for the next 50, 60, 70 years at the marina. That's not going anywhere. It's built right. And the nice thing is we also did it in a way that enhances the property owner experience. So everybody hangs out there now in the morning and gets coffee, and it's a popular, beautiful place to watch the eagles and watch the sunset. So that was a big win for the community. Next one that kind of went along with that was way over on the right. Last year I showed you a picture that kind of looked like that. That was not a fisheye lens. That was a real picture. The whole wall, it was like bulging and falling out at Lake Disharoon. That wall was put in a little after that building was put in, which was 1974, I think, 73, 74. So this was the technology used for all the walls I'm talking about. They're like really huge Lego blocks that are made out of concrete. And like I said, they're not going anywhere ever, actually. Put in with cranes and things like that. And that is now what our beautiful new area looks like. We went from that down to that. Nice and safe, wide, beautiful, again, meets the aesthetic of what Big Canoe should be as a community. Creek 2 Bridge, this is the covered bridge that you see from Wilderness as you look out across Lake Sconty, and you see that covered bridge. Kind of looks nice, especially when you put a couple Christmas wreaths on it. Looks pretty nice. Get close to that bridge, it doesn't look so nice. You've got rotted timbers underneath, structural problems with that, rotted timber walls. All of that is ready to be reconstructed, except it's going to rain all week. So it was supposed to start next week. It's probably going to start in the next couple weeks, but that bridge will also be done correctly with helical piers, rebuild these retaining walls, and we're also going to make it a little bit higher so that we can get all of our golf course equipment through that bridge, which we currently can't do. So another project that we're catching up on that will then last for a long time. And the Racquet Club, our oldest building. This was the original Wolf Scratch School, or at least half of the Wolf Scratch School, that was built around the turn of the century, 1910s kind of thing. When Lydell did our building inspection as part of the long-range planning process, we got under there, and I think I showed you some pictures in the board meetings. There were joists that had just been sawed off that were just hanging. There was joists that didn't reach the foundation. There were temporary jacks that had been there for, 20 or 30 years that were supposed to be there for 2 or 3 weeks that were holding up that building. So this is kind of like one of the things you now see on this old house or something. They're putting steel beams underneath that building. And again, it was supposed to happen this week. It'll probably happen the week after. It's going to be jacked up, and they're going to literally lift that whole building, rebuild the whole foundation, and while we're at it, things like insulation. We got our employees right now working in an uninsulated building from 100 years ago. Flooring, ductwork, new bathrooms, upgrade and paint. Get that building ready to last a long, long time as well, because that's kind of part of the character of Big Canoe. It's great to go up there and say, that was the original school, and now you're going to have a racquet club that you can be proud of also. So catching up on a few things that had been deferred for a long time. Dredging, our favorite project. So this happened a year and a half ago when we had the failure of the Lake Disharoon sluice gate system and the pipe that got the big hole put in it. All that silt went into Lake Sconty. And I have learned that if anybody's looking for a business that they want to start, dredging is a really good one to start because you can't find people who will do this anymore. It's kind of like welding or construction or maybe hospitality anymore. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's hard to find a good dredger. They are booked up like a year in advance. So luckily, we have it, and they have started. And they're pulling a lot of material out on a very scary-looking machine over there that they're clearing out the whole area from the rock slide to the bridge on Wilderness Parkway, and then they'll start moving over to the other side. So that's probably a 2 to 3 month project, but it will be ready for the spring, and all that muck and stuff will be gone. And now the good news, too, is we're trying to make a little lemonade out of lemons. I think that's the way that works. There was supposed to be a forward tee on Creek 3. And one of the things we did when we value engineered the Creek 3 project to hit the budget that the community voted on, we eliminated that forward tee. Well, thanks to Mother Nature, we now have enough material sitting right where it should be to create that forward tee. So we're going to leave that material in place. It's about 75 yards back from where the pin usually is on Creek 3. And we'll sculpt it later and make it into a tee box. But right now, the material will be left. That's less stuff we have to carry away. We'll put some sod on it so it looks pretty and doesn't erode. But Lemonade out of lemons on that one. Safety and security. This was the next thing on the strategic plan that we said was really important. That is a beautiful shot of our brand new fire truck that we commissioned on the July 4th weekend. And this is where we've come. So this was us 50 years ago. There they are. That is an ambulance. That looks like Ghostbusters, doesn't it? But it was real. It was really here. It's pretty neat, you know. There's all kinds of stories about ghosts in the lodge and things like that, although I have never seen them. But that kind of ties in nicely with that. And these are the guys now. So we've gone from that to that. This group is something to be very, very proud of. So we have the very first fire truck built to big Canoe specs in 40 years. Pretty neat. Speaking of the group to be proud of, this is the full year through October. I don't have November numbers yet, but they had 815 calls. And by the way, if Ricky were here, he would say that's 815 emergency type calls. They get calls for everything. They get calls for flat tires. They get calls for just, aid to help somebody, get a bear off of their back deck. That happens, believe it or not, more than once. If you've got a battery that needs jump started, none of those calls are in those numbers. So 367 rule and regulation concerns, 368 EMS calls, and 80 fire calls throughout the year. You may also know, or maybe not, because there was a lot of new people here today, which is awesome. All of our guys now are trained as EMS. Even though we tend to think of them like, oh, they're the fire department, they really do so much more than that, and a lot of it is health related. And along with the Wellness Collaborative, it's one of the main great reasons to live in Big Canoe. It's one of the reasons that we live in Big Canoe. So 367 rules and regulations. You can see that generated 291 citations. And it's kind of interesting, almost an even split between noise, parking, and pet-related problems. And then the big one, as you might think, would be speeding and traffic. Then you peel it apart a little further and you say, who were those people? And well, it's predominantly us. We get a little loose on how we corner some of our roads, and we're always in a hurry for a doctor's appointment or something, so we go a little bit fast because we know where we're going. So a lot of those traffic goes right to the residents. There were 58 guests. Most of the time, honestly, those are parking or noise, but many times it's not being aware of the rules. And so we took that under consideration with our governance activities, and I'll talk about that in a second, of how we tried to get more information out to the renters about rules and regulations. So on governance, one of the big things we did this year, we just launched a brand new website. And the website it's got many wonderful features. There was all kinds of old content on the old website that was maybe not accurate anymore. Plus, it was really hard to find stuff. So we added a search capability. The old website didn't really have that. And what's fun about that search is it searches everything. So it'll search the Inside the Gates articles that are on the website. It'll search the content that's on the website, and it'll search the calendar, which is brand new, that's on the website. And it'll bring up those search results for you right there. We're continuing to improve that capability, especially on those wonderful documents that Amy knows inside out about covenants and bylaws and rules and regulations and all that. In order to make that searchable right down to the very, very level that we want, we're having to reconstruct all those documents so they're not PDFs anymore. That is still in process, but it'll keep getting better and better. The calendar is my favorite. I love the calendar because it's a searchable calendar. Used to be we put everything in the calendar. You look at this thing, you couldn't read it. It was just filled with stuff. Now you can sort it. You can say, show me what's going on at the clubhouse. I want to go do something fun at the clubhouse. Show me what's going on with this particular club. I want to see when the next time is that the quilting organization is meeting or something. All of that now is in the calendar. And if it's something like at the clubhouse, you can hover over it and up comes information and you say, that's what's going on with the Santa brunch. And if you then want to click on that, it takes you right to the registration page. So we're trying to make it easier, trying to make it more visible, trying to improve the property owner experience. The other thing we did, Amy mentioned this, is we said, we all kind of yell at the renters. We do, right? Oh gosh, those people, they're driving over crazy, whatever. As we kind of learned, it might be us driving a little bit crazy. The renters are scared to death of our roads. They drive very, very slowly, usually. They may be lost, but they drive very, very slowly. But sometimes they didn't know the rules. They didn't know about parking. They parked in the wrong places. They didn't understand noise. There's too many people on the deck. They got the thing blaring at the hot tub, whatever. We created this rental guide, visitor guide to Big Canoe. And we printed, so far to date, about 10,000 of them this year have been given out. And what happens is if you're a guest and you come to the gate, any of the gates, they will know that you're a guest and they'll say, have you been here before? Do you know where you're going? Do you know what the rules are? And they will hand out this packet. And the packet's great because the very first thing we're figuring, got the kids in the car, they want to get to the rock slide, they want to have fun. So we made it so the very first thing you see are the rules and regulations. And we didn't put them in that PDF 300 pages. We said, kind of David Letterman, what are the top 10 rules you need to know to make your visit to Big Canoe work out really well? And so those are very, very obvious and right up front. And then we tell you where to eat because, while you're here, we might as well send you to the clubhouse and, make a little money on a meal or something like that. So we kind of steered people to what you can do, rent a boat, how you get a tea time, things like that. So all of that gets handed out at the gate. Next thing, I mentioned it before, these are the most important people here. As I tell people sometimes, most of us, if we're not there, we're on vacation, rarely, but if we're on vacation, you don't know we're on vacation. If these folks are on vacation, you know that they're on vacation. So these are the folks we really, really, really want to take care of. So I'm very proud of the next two slides. We have come so far in the last 365 days since I stood here this time last year. We have been out looking for the best and the brightest that we could get to take Big Canoe to the next level and to provide the momentum and leadership that we needed for the future. So Kevin Sams took over as golf course superintendent. Lydell, getting promoted, left some really big shoes to fill. I think we filled them really well with Kevin. Everybody keeps telling me the course is in the best shape it's been. It's in great shape. Ron Davis was hired to supplement Trina. Trina has been a one lady show for a long, long time, and someday will retire. We hope not. I keep saying another year, right? Another year. But anyway, Ron, with all the work going on with building, future work with the developer, we wanted to make sure Trina could focus on that, and that gives Ron more ability to focus on rule enforcement and making sure that we're keeping up on all of our architectural guidelines. So Ron does a great job. Kathy, brand new, 6 months ago, we have taken our HR capability from here to way up here, and it's because of her. So it's wonderful to have a really seasoned SHRM HR professional on staff. So a lot more good things will come from there. Elaine Fitzgerald is our newest property owner employee. She just joined us as an HR assistant and POA office manager. So we're really happy to have Elaine. Mihaela, I think many of you know her. She has done an amazing job at the clubhouse, and we got a long way to go. It's a journey. It's not a light switch. It's not like you flip it and it's done, but we're moving in the right direction, and a lot of it is because of her. And Michael, Chef Michael, if you haven't tasted his wonderful creations, people who have are very, very excited and happy. And he's a great teacher, too. He started the Cordon Bleu School in Atlanta years ago, so he's mentoring and teaching and working with the folks in the back of the house. And then Amanda Copeland is our new activities manager. So if you were at the Winter Ball last night, or if you want to just walk in the clubhouse and see how beautiful it is, she had a lot to do with that also. So this one's very special. This was a hard slide to do. This one is very, very special. Debbie Pickett, many of you know Debbie. She was here for over 30 years. Debbie passed away this summer. And this was Tim Moran's idea, which was an awesome idea, is we want to honor Debbie forever, because she's like in the DNA of Big Canoe. And basically, Debbie was known as, if you thought of some employee who exemplified what Big Canoe stood for and stands for and how we all want to aspire to be, she was the person. And we've created a new award. This is going to be an annual award, kind of like the President's Award that the board does. This will be a Debbie Pickett Award that we do as the staff and we recommend to the board. And it'll be once a year at this meeting, this time next year, for an employee who basically exhibits Debbie's dedication to the community, how she worked with other employees, her sense of teamwork, and she was always in love with this place forever. So we're going to keep her alive forever by doing that award. So that's look for more on that. Kathy's going to be leading a group of people on how we define the requirements of that award. What does it take to win? What does it mean to win? But it'll be a big honor if you're an employee to win that award. Property owner experience. So last winter, Public Works, believe it or not, we brine the roads. People don't know that we do this. They don't even know that we have this kind of capability. When they take the behind-the-scenes tour, if you're on Leadership Big Canoe, people are always like, oh my gosh, I had no idea all that equipment existed. So yes, we put 3,500 gallons of brine down before it snows is the right time to do that. 126 hours of people's time plowing ice and snow, and 10 truckloads of gravel and salt. So for those of you who just moved to Big Canoe, if you're at 2,000 feet or above, that's where you're going to get to see snow and ice. It's really exciting. The rest of us look up there and say, oh, isn't that beautiful? Let's go to the clubhouse and whatever. Have some soup. A generator's a good thing. And we don't clear the roads. This is not Alpharetta or Swanee or something like that. We basically make sure as quick as we can that there's an emergency lane open so that public safety can get to you and stuff. But it usually takes a couple days to make sure that the roads are totally clear. So just be a little prepared. It's a little different than living in like Alpharetta. Spring, when the bears come out of their sort of hibernation, we did this year 3,500 hemlock trees on POA property and 4,500 hemlock trees on residential lots. And it was funny, I was in Asheville last weekend, and we bought this beautiful block printed print of a hemlock, and it said below it, it said, "The Vanishing Hemlock." And I'm like, not here. It's not vanishing. We are the largest stand of healthy hemlocks east of the Mississippi, and the reason is because every few years we spend a bunch of money and time and work with the Trails Committee and our guys to make sure all of our hemlocks stay healthy. Also, for the first time, we treated the ashes that we have. We don't have a lot of ash trees, but we have some, and we treated about 100 of those to make sure they stayed healthy too. Fresh pine straw always comes out, and that beautiful rock slide that all the grandkids love, that takes a bit of work to get it ready every year for the spring and summer season. And then you go into fall. And this is interesting. We take this for granted, except when you look at your own yard and you're like, how am I going to get the leaves out of my yard? Imagine getting the leaves out of 88 miles of yards. This is what public safety does Public Works. Lydell's guys are out there along with the landscape crews, and they're basically, we've got a 5-man crew that's cleaning road shoulders and things daily. We have a 2-man crew that's out, think about it, dog parks, all the 26 miles of trails, all of that stuff has to get taken care of. And then things like, parking lots and walkways and all that stuff that we striped with that beautiful paint we were talking about, all that needs to be cleared too. So it's a kind of Herculean effort for a few weeks to get rid of all the leaves, and something we don't think about and take for granted, but these guys think about it and don't take it for granted. And membership, one of the other things we did on the property owner experience is we reopened the lodge. We got Terry Sawyer sitting in the front, so that way she's there to aid and help, and she can answer questions about membership and direct you to many services around here. Terry always has her phone forwarded to her cell phone, so even if she's at a meeting or something, she'll get the call, she'll get back to you, she'll tell you where to go. Very, very, very helpful. And we also made sure that all of our brochures and everything were up to date and correct for all of our amenity memberships. And last but not least, there's a lot to do. We're not done yet. We've got, even though it's the beginning of December, if you're still looking for something to do this month, there is lots to do this month. So I won't read all those. Mark puts it out, Mark De Lavina and the communications team. We put this stuff out every single week, and the list, like I said, is still pretty long. So there is a lot of things. Plus, you can find all this on the calendar on the website that I was just talking about. All right, now it gets a little more boring. Sorry, I have to do this, though. But it's good. It's good, but it's not as exciting. But finance report. This is through October. This is where we were. So general operating revenues are about $9.7 million. Operating expenses are $108,000 better than the budget we built at $6.3 million of expenses. Amenities are something to be really, really proud of. We used to lose money on amenities. You don't really want to lose money on amenities because we know we're not going to make money on paving roads. We know we're not going to make money on all that leaf blowing and stuff. You would like to at least break even, if not make money on amenities, and we do, and we are. So we're about $86,000 ahead on the amenities at a positive $657,000 net income. That's good, because that helps make sure we don't have to make up for that money with our operating assessments. Depreciation, about $2.5 million. You're going to see that number keep going up because we're doing more and more projects. All the things we've been talking about drive the depreciation number higher than it used to be. If you don't do any projects, the depreciation number gets pretty small, but your buildings fall apart. And net income from operation, therefore, is right now through October, $1.6 million, which is $263,000 to the good versus the budget. So like I said, not too exciting, but good news. This one, this is my favorite one. This is talking about amenities again. If you look at it, everything here on net income is positive, and some of them are very, very positive, and everything over here compared to budget is also positive. So we're beating expectations. Even the clubhouse, which traditionally forever and ever and ever lost about $450,000 a year, even the clubhouse is not going to be anywhere near that loss and is running about $25,000 to the good versus plan. The only thing that was off all year was the marina, and I mentioned this in our monthly meetings. This is what happens in corporate America when you have a successful business or a successful division. When it's budget time, your CEO comes to you and says, you got to do even better because I trust you and you can hit your numbers, so I want you to hit higher numbers. That's what we did to poor John this year. We really leaned in. So even though he was off on budget, look at that number, 436, and compare it to anything else there. Marina does really, really well for us. It's become, I think, everybody's, other than the trails, which are kind of free, it's become probably everybody's favorite amenity. So, way to go.
Is debt service included here?
Is it what?
Debt service included here.
Debt service is not. So basically, we look at, I'll talk about capital in a second. So basically, we don't add into that separately. You know, if you took the capital and put it against every single number, that wouldn't be true. But we keep the capital separate, which I'll talk about in a second.
Expenditures for the master plan, is that included here too?
No, master plan we'll talk about. Hang on, we'll do questions at the end because I'll hit some of your points, but thanks. So operating cash, this is where we are as of October. So basically, if you look at where we were this time last year, so operating cash is down about $380,000 there. Master plan and capital fund put together is sitting here up at $3.3 million. And the money that goes in there are like your CCF money. So every time a house is purchased, this year $3,000, next year $3,500 goes into that fund. Also the $40 that we all get on our assessments that goes against capital assessments, that also goes into that money. Restricted capital reserve, that's what we think of as our emergency fund. You can see it's flat. We literally ignore that fund. It's like it's there. God forbid there's a huge tornado. God forbid we gotta move 1 million trees or something. That would be the emergency fund. We also have another line of credit that we could tap into with Wells Fargo if we ever needed it. It's never been used by Big Canoe. We have no intention of ever touching that money unless there's an emergency. And so total cash has gone from 6.9 to 8.6. When we talk about big master plan projects, like Regis was mentioning, that's part of the presentation that everybody will see in January, is where does that money come from? If you're gonna renovate the clubhouse, if you're gonna build a new postal facility, if you're gonna do something with key parking lots, if you're gonna work on the fitness center, that is why we went and secured the $15 million revolving line of credit at the 3.46 fixed rate beginning in 2025. So that is not in any of these standard operating numbers. That's sitting out there, and all that would require a property owner vote. So we will be voting as property owners to say, what do we want to do on the master plan? And then by doing that, you're also voting to say we're authorizing the board and the community to go take money out of that $15 million. So there'll be many meetings between January and the time we actually go and do a vote, which will probably be late next spring. Sale of properties, so basically again through October, I don't have more up-to-date numbers right now, about 73 lots, 196 home sales, running at about an average list price of $730,206 per square foot. And currently, according to Meg, about 49 homes on the market is where we stand right now. All right, let's talk about the budget for next year. So we went into the budget philosophically saying a couple things we want to accomplish. The first thing is we want to, other than the cost of capital, which again I'll talk about capital in a second, we want to look at every business as much as a self-contained business, every amenity as much as of a self-contained business as it can be. So if there were specific costs that flowed to that amenity, like the price of sand went up, or the price of sod went up, or the price of rock went up, or whatever, we wanted to make sure that those costs went into each amenity, and that amenity could cover those costs without the general assessment covering those costs. So trying to look at each amenity more and more over time as a standalone business. We also basically said no guest fee increases. And you're like, whoa, why? Why didn't we take up guest fees? We took up guest fees a lot last year. We went about as high, and maybe in the case of the marina, maybe too high on some guest fees. What we've done this year, we went out and we benchmarked. We looked at as many like communities as we could find. We looked at the cost of fitness centers, other places. We looked at marinas that we could find that were more like us. And we're like, our guest fees are fine. They're good. We took them up last year. This year we didn't. We'll look at it again next year. So we didn't really tax the guests any more than what we had already done. We also basically said community-wide cost increases. So if you're talking about the cost of our roads, increased cost of asphalt, increased cost of garbage, cleaning the ditches, fixing those culverts, all those kind of things, those would be covered under our general operating assessments. So things that benefit the whole community would be covered under operating assessments. Things that are attributable to one particular amenity should be borne by the membership fees and the day use fees of that amenity. So that was the strategy that we used. We also said, let's keep headcount in 2023 equal to where we are in 2022. Sometimes in the past, budgets were done saying, oh, well, you've run all year with 3 less people in golf or whatever, but I still want those 3 people, so we're going to put them in the budget for next year. We've looked at everything and said the run rate that we're leaving this year with, we're very comfortable that we can get everything done that we need to get done, the high priority things, so we didn't add any additional headcount into next year. And then the managers all built annual action plans that were tied to those 5 strategic objectives, and the money then tied to those action plans. So where we ended up with is your general operating revenue, which is mostly assessments, is $12 million next year. Operating expenses, a minus 8.6. Your amenity net income at 563, up from 509. So like I said, that number would have been about minus 170, I think, if you looked back at 2019. So we've turned a big cash drain into a cash asset here. And then net income before depreciation then is about 4.2 million positive. That number, depreciation, I'll just finish. That number, depreciation is about 3.2. Again, you're going to see that number increase year to year as we do more and more projects. And net income from operations then is almost a positive, excuse me, $1 million. Why that number is really important? We always kind of try to hit 4.2-ish. And the reason for that is there's about 1.3 million of debt service that we know we have to cover. And we also typically have been running at about $3 million of replacement capital. So if you add those 2 numbers together, you always want that number at the end of the budget, the net income before depreciation, to be around 4.2. Then you've got the money already to cover the debt service, and you've got the money for our normal run rate on capital. So to do that, what is happening, and by the way, if you haven't seen this, I did about an hour-and-a-half presentation where we went slide by slide by slide through every change in the budget. It's on the YouTube channel. So again, if you want to get a glass of wine and light the fire and on a rainy day and really get into what drove all these numbers, it's out there. It's on our YouTube channel. So this is the $50,000 real quick flyover, so I don't put you all to sleep again for another hour. But anyway, assessment increases $15 a month for operations, $5 a month for capital. So we're going up 20 on our total assessment. You can see over the last few years, in 2019 it went up by 20. In 2020, the capital fee was introduced, so our total assessments went up by 25. Didn't do anything in 2021 because we were coming out of COVID and things were just all up in the air. 2022, 15 and 15, 30 and 15 and 5. That is a 6% increase. So we did this from a bottoms up. We were pretty happy that we were able to get it at 6% when inflation and everything went up for us, whether it was gas, whether it was sod, whether it was sand, transportation costs, everything, food costs, everything has just gone up. So inflation running about 8.1%, we managed to keep it at 6%. So not like, you don't run out and do handstands, but at least it was below the run rate of inflation. We also then, this gets back to my earlier point, which is if there were costs that went to a specific amenity, if people at the at golf, if we did salary benchmarking and found out that some of those people were well below where they should be for the Jasper area, those costs went to the golf amenity, and therefore those costs were absorbed by the golf amenity. So these are all changes to membership fees, nothing on wellness and fishing. We've looked at wellness. We feel that we're very competitive with outside fitness centers. We didn't want to take that up any further. 5% increase in golf, 4% in racket club, which is tennis and pickleball only, 3% in aquatics, $10 an hour on pontoon rentals. We are replacing the entire pontoon fleet. The entire pontoon fleet was new in 2018. Those boats have been out 20,000 times. If you get there, it's a little like the Creek 2 bridge. You drive by the marina, you look down there, you say, oh, boats look beautiful. Get on those boats, they don't look beautiful. They are really beat to heck. And we flip our golf cart fleet about every 5 years on a operating lease. We're going to start treating the pontoon boats the same way. Technology changes, those assets don't last longer than 4 or 5 years. Make sure we have the best and greatest. And quite frankly, from a P&L point of view, they pay for themselves really, really quickly. Like you saw, the marina does very well. So that's the first time we've taken property owner fees up on the boats since 2018. And 50 cent in increase in golf cart fees. And people always ask me, Scott, that's great, there's a lot of numbers, but can you just tell me, like, where do my assessments go? What happens, right? So the assessment increase that I'm talking about, the $15 of the 20, 5 goes to capital, the other 15 goes to operating. That makes up $544,000. Where does it go? Good news is 35 plus 11, 46% of it goes to our employees. I like our employees. They're really important. What Kathy did, we asked her to basically say, go do a benchmark. Not of Charlotte, not of Atlanta downtown, not of Miami Beach. Go do a benchmark of Jasper and a little bit of Dawson and look at every single job function we have and tell us where we are versus the min, the mid, and the max for our local area. It was pretty eye-opening. Most of our people were not even at the midpoint. Some of our job functions weren't even at the min. We have not necessarily kept up with the area over the past 10 years or so. So we said, if our strategic plan says employees are really, really important, and we all depend on our employees, we at least got to get them moving towards the midpoint. We can't even get them all the way to the midpoint. It'd be way too much money, but we got to get them moving in the right direction. So 46% here goes to the employees who do not work in the amenities. The ones who do work in the amenities were covered by those other fees that I talked about, the 5% on golf, the 4% on tennis, that kind of thing. That's where that money went. So this is for all the guys who do everything else, all that leaf blowing, all that road work, all of those type of functions that are not specific to one thing. That's how we're getting them closer to the midpoint. 40 miles of ditch cleaning and road trimming. We have ignored, like our culverts, we have ignored our ditches. The ditches are really important. We don't live in Alpharetta. We don't have concrete gutters. We have drainage ditches. If those ditches are not maintained properly, every time it rains really heavy again, all that stuff, rocks, debris, leaves, mud, all that stuff comes off the mountains, goes into our driveways, really messes things up. So Lydell found a company who is going to help us and do a lot of that for probably the first time in 20 or 30 years. So about 26% of that assessment increase is going there. And this one's terrible, garbage. So we cleaned up the garbage facility. Every single refuse hauler has dramatically raised their prices. We went out, our existing contract with Advanced Disposal is done, came to an end this year. We went out and bid to 3 new haulers. The 21% increase was the best of the 3. The other ones were higher than that. The landfills are charging more, their people are charging more, their cost of hauling with gasoline, diesel fuel is going up. So all 3 of these guys, I'm like, 21% is the best? It is. 21% is the best we could get. So unfortunately, a chunk of our common operating assessments is going to garbage. This is the big picture. This is the one everybody really likes. So that's nice. I got your assessment increase. Where's all my assessments going? So we have close to $12 million, you saw it on that first slide, of assessment dollars. If you look at how that's breaking down, about a quarter of it goes to public works, everything we've been talking about here, landscaping, and all the environmental protection, getting rid of all of our invasive species, for example. Admin, communications department, and architectural control takes up almost another quarter of it. Replacement capital About 17%, and I'll show you in a second what those are, 17% goes to that. Public safety takes 16%, and there's the debt service. So that's 1.3 million of debt service that is coming out of our total assessment dollars. There's property taxes and insurance. Guess what? That went up by 15% this year. Nobody's going down on insurance. And out of all the amenities, the only thing that we all are subsidizing with our assessment dollars is 3% of that money goes to the clubhouse, because that's really kind of equivalent at a normal club. That would be like your social fee, or that would be like your food minimum. That's where ours comes from. It's 3% of the total assessment dollars. So let's talk about capital real quick. This is everything 6.3 million. You say, Scott, 6.3 million. Oh my gosh, wait, you said we always run at 3 million, and so that's how the money works. So why is it 6.3? There's this thing up here called Pettit Dam. Pettit Dam is sitting there at 2.2 million. Pettit Dam is really, used to be, if you look back 2 years, it was in the master plan list of projects. For transparency's sake, we actually moved it to replacement capital last year. And the reason is because the master plan it's subjective, and we decide as a community if we're going to spend $0 or if we're going to spend $15 million on the master plan. We don't have to make our clubhouse, better. We don't have to have a post office that's safer with more boxes. We don't have to have a marina parking lot that's nicer. We do need to take care of the dam. So we moved that 2.2 million out of master plan and into this total. We didn't move the money. The money's still sitting over there in the master plan bucket. Sandy Polera goes through that every single month at the board meetings from the finance committee report. So the money's sitting over there in master plan, but we're showing the project, if you will, as replacement capital, because we don't have a choice. We have to do that. Now, you'd ask me if 2.2 million is the right amount of money. Ask Wes McDonald from Geosyntec that question when he's done with his presentation, which is next. We believe that is a very worst case number for 2023. In case anybody asks, we do have another $3.2 million in 2024's cash flow analysis earmarked for the dam. So you put those two together, it's a little over $5 million for the dam. That is super worst case, like we have to rebuild all kinds of stuff. We don't think that's what's going to happen, but we'd rather plan for the worst and hope for the best, that we come in underneath it. But we are planning for what we believe to be the biggest number. So you go down from here. Roads are always your next biggest one, 1.1 million. We haven't talked about the other. We've got the ditches, we've got the roads themselves, we've got the culverts. The other thing is we've got 4 areas around here where the road is starting to slough off and fall down the mountain. You can see the easiest one you can see is between the main gate and the covered bridge. We paved it just so it was smoother, but it's a temporary patch. There's a section of that road that's falling towards Blackwell Creek. There's 4 of those that we need to take care of this year, so there's about $400,000 on that. Marina seawall, the other side of the marina, so I showed you what we did on the left side. As you face the shack, go to the right side, that wall's not in terribly great shape, and we're going to make a nice gathering area there as well. So that's 250 right there. Golf course equipment is 221. That's part of that. Golf is a capital intensive business. We're always updating the equipment as things wear out. 3 trucks, we beat the heck out of our trucks every single year. We wait till they're kind of on their last legs, and then we replace them. So there's 3 trucks there. Beach club furniture. The furniture at the beach club is beyond hope. It is that old strappy furniture. It's really worn out. You can't just pressure wash it anymore. So we're doing the beach club this year, and when I'm standing here next year, we'll be doing the Wildcat the year after that. So keeping up on the furniture because it's pretty shabby. Wilderness covered bridge. We almost had it again this week. We had a big truck. This time it stopped, which was really good. It stopped. And then it's like, what do? You've got a moving van that's got to back up all the way back to Equestrian. Not a good idea. So we are going to raise that bridge. The same company who's going to raise up our, people are clapping up here. The same company that's raising the racket club is then going to raise the roof about 6 inches, literally cut it, raise it, and put spacers in. So we don't have to rip the whole thing apart, which is great. It's going to be a little bit of a pain for a couple of weeks. I'm sorry in advance. But the good news is at least nothing will hit the bridge anymore, which constantly shuts down Wilderness anyway. Fitness equipment, we keep trying to improve a sign router, a CNC router. We are so far behind on signs here. We've had to cut off any more property owner mailbox sort of signs. People laugh when you say mailbox, street signs, marker signs, whatever. We are going to hopefully be able to get our throughput up farther so we can get back to that. Stone wall at the beach club. There is an old timber wall on the handicap lot by the beach club. It's falling in. The hill's going to fall into the handicap lot. Going to replace that with the modular stone blocks as well. We're trying to get rid of wood anywhere we can here. We're trying to get rid of wood because wood rots and gets dangerous and splinters. And so we're trying to make things permanent so we don't have to keep going back and doing the same stuff every 10 or 15 years. Tennis court fencing, about time. It has been flipped and flipped, and there's nowhere else to flip it. So it's all bowed and shot. We have way outlasted the tennis court lifespan on the fencing. So, and again, that's around the courts. Somebody said, you're not going to put up fences every... No, it's around the courts. Beach club pump house, pumps are kind of wearing out in certain places, so we have to do that. And then there's another 1.2 million of various things. It's on the website. It's up there right now. So if you want to go home today and look at the 5-page document of all the other stuff. Somebody asked me the other night, well, what's below that? There's things like 6 air conditioning units, new walk-in freezers, new security cameras, new transponder readers. The list goes on and on, but those are all the big ones up there. And I'm done for now. Now, the bad news, kinda, is when it's 10:30 last night and you get a call from Chattanooga from one of your presenters, that's never a good thing. So unfortunately, Wes's family has come down with COVID and he tested positive last night for COVID. So I said, no, please, no, do not come to the chapel. That's a bad thing. So through the wonderful work of the AV guys in the back, we are patching Wes in from his home in Chattanooga, and I'll do the flipping for him. Wes, Geosyntec is probably one of the major, is certainly actually one of the major engineering companies in the country that deals with major civil engineering projects. They do a ton of work for the TVA. That's part of why they're located in Chattanooga. And they are the engineer of record for the Lake Pettit Dam. They've been involved with the Lake Pettit Dam at some level since probably about 2002. Over the last 2.5 years, they've been intimately involved with the Lake Pettit Dam. So Wes is here to take us through that. You guys ready back there? Paul, good?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Wes.
Great. I could not hear everything that was being said, but I want to just thank you guys for making accommodations for me. Sorry I could not be there in person, but doing just fine. And thanks for having me back, Scott, to talk through items that have been happening at Lake Pettit. I assume the audio is good, so please interrupt me if it starts acting up. I'll go ahead and move on to slide 70. So what I'd like to walk the community through today is the many items that have been completed this year. And mainly this is to continue to maintain this 50-year-old. And then I'll go over the items that will be happening in this coming year. The POA has been very focused in investing in Lake Pettit Dam the last few years and wants to ensure this 126-foot tall structure is maintained for the enjoyment and protection of the community. So it's definitely lot of influx and focus on this the last few years, and hopefully the things we'll walk you through is evidence of that. So I'll go to the next slide. I have it as slide 71, the first words, maintenance repairs to dam.
Go ahead, Wes, you're there.
Great, thanks. So several construction maintenance activities were completed on the dam this year, including erosion protection, enhancements, installation of a downstream blanket for seepage mitigation, and interim repairs for the ensuring the lifespan of the spillway. The upstream erosion protection was done to ensure that wave action doesn't degrade the dam. The existing riprap that was there was pulled out. We put in a graded filter there with additional riprap, and we added it along the upstream shoreline of the dam, and just to protect it so that the overall cross section of the dam is not being degraded. That was an item that's been in line for a while, so it's good to get that one done. I think it ended up looking really good. And the second item is an item that was identified from our quarterly inspections that we had identified and monitored, and we were able to address that this year with a reverse graded filter over a wet area. And this wet area had a potential for water flow that was observed, but also a potential to remove soil particles from the dam. So this filter was installed, keep full in place, but still allow the water to pass. So water flowing through an earthen embankment dam like Lake Pettit is to be expected. The quarterly inspections also observed some areas of damage to the spillway. So we were able to work and dewater the spillway, reroute the water around it, and get our engineers inside there to inspect it more thoroughly. And in doing so, we identified several other areas that needed some repairs. And those repairs were done with a specialty grouting contractor who was used to make patch repairs that you can see in the photos. And also we injected grout into some areas where we have detected voids under the surface. So that was done, and just these are the things that you have to do when you own a high hazard, very, very large dam. Next slide, please. The bathymetric survey was also conducted this year. The survey of the lake was conducted to inform several items for the future of the dam, including the inundation mapping for the emergency action plan, or the EAP, you may hear me call it. It also helps inform the low-level outlet testing and future design that may need to be done for the spillway and or the outlet upgrades. The survey provided depths and allowed us to calculate the exact volume of the lake, which we then submitted to the state and received their concurrence on. I should note, most state records are estimates of volumes of lakes, and so we were able to refine this so that we can have a point in time, a data point to move forward with all these other things on, and we were able to receive the state's concurrence. And it ended up showing that the maximum depth of water at the normal pool of the lake is 97 feet. That's the maximum. And the normal pool volume is 4,235 acre feet. The other thing that was a large change from this was in the maximum storage of the lake, which is used for the inundation mapping. And we were able to show that there was actually 1,800 acre feet less than what the state records had. So this was useful for many reasons. With all the updates to the maintenance repairs, further understanding of the dam from the inspections, from these values that we are obtaining for data of the lake, we've also been updating the O&M plan to reflect these changes, and its use for future maintenance and for future decision making with the dam. Next slide. This year we completed the biannual engineer inspection. Those are required by the Safe Dams program in Georgia every 2 years. The next one will be in 2024. And along the lines of that, we also continued our support for the owner's inspections as well. The state requires owners inspections to be done quarterly. However, the POA's gone above and beyond with this task and asked us as engineers to do those. So it's not required to be done by engineers, but we are continuing to help them. And we're walking the entire dam, going in places where, some people may not see all the time. We're taking instrumentation readings that you can see there. And then we occasionally observe wildlife, like the little guy that's shown, the deer, was observed by one of our inspectors this year over by the spillway, which was pretty cool. In terms of the emergency action plan, we've been revising that in coordination with the Georgia Safe Dam Program. Emergency action plan is required for high hazard dams. It shows the inundation area, release of a complete full reservoir go downstream. And what that would look like in the community is water all the way up to the top of the, not where you see it day to day. So just wanted to clarify that. So in that modeling that's required, the last model done was in the early 2000s, and we've updated that inundation mapping with new stuff and the data we had, and then we obtained the new data from the lake, the bathymetry model as well. And so we've received several comments from the state on those and are addressing them. And the comments included lake volume, coordination with the county on addresses of the inundated structures. We would provide the inundated area, and the county, who would be the emergency responders in these cases, provided us the addresses. So we're making sure we're in conjunction with these guys who will be doing it to make sure the plan is one, updated and active, and then usable. And so we're very near the finish line for getting this EAP approved and hoping to have the state's approval in the next week or two. The last item here is coordination with contractors. The low-level outlet at the dam is an item that we are trying to ensure we can get working. The goal here is if we can get this low-level outlet working, we won't have to build a new one, which could lead to some cost savings in the future for some of these dam upgrades. So we've been coordinating with contractors for a low-level outlet testing plan, and a contractor has been identified, and they'll actually be in the field this coming week to conduct the initial phase of this work. The contractor identified some data gaps that they'd like to have before moving on with the implementation phase. So they'll be obtaining some additional data out there at the low-level outlet, and then also in the pipe as well. So the phase one will consist of this data gathering and getting these precise measurements. So that will then inform phase two. So if we get everything looking good, phase two will be conducted, and I'll get into that. But the general plan is to install a mechanical plug behind the low-level outlet sluice gate, which is at the upstream flow of the dam, right below the reservoir. Then with that plug in place, we can safely operate the gate, test it, make any repairs if they need to be done, and divers will be able to do that. And the plug allows the reservoir to stay level and not drain while the work is being done on the sluice gate. So next slide is the next steps, and we can go ahead and skip to the one after that with the photos and text. So what's coming up this year? The physical inspection of the low-level pipe is, like I mentioned, occurring this week. Implementation of phase two is targeting an end of completion by March. So as I mentioned, we're getting some precise measurements here from these pipes to make sure the pipe fits, or excuse me, the plug fits. There'll be a specialty manufacturing phase that will need to be done to manufacture this plug. And there's a couple images on the right there that show what this may look like. There's a computer generated image and a photo of another one. That's not what we're putting in exactly, but just to give you an idea of what it might be. And that specialty manufacturing is dependent on, supply chain, parts, and things like that. So the schedule we have is what we anticipate, but depending on, just different issues in the industry, it may change. The tabletop exercise will be an exercise to test the emergency action plan. with the emergency responders in the area. And we'll include the county EMA, emergency management, that is, the sheriff, Big Canoe, safety personnel will all be invited to have in one room and walk through this plan so that everyone involved understands their roles and responsibilities. We'll go through an activity of what would happen, who does what, should an issue with the dam occur, and should that plan need to be enacted. So we're looking forward to that in February this year, and I think that'll be good. A lot of good things learned there, and getting the community the community of responders together. Lastly, we have the continued quarterly inspections. Will allow for a separate set of eyes that's not seeing the dam daily like some of the POA employees that are there every day. So we'll continue to take those instrumentation readings, do our inspections, and coordinate with the POA maintenance crew, Lydell and his crews, for ongoing maintenance as a result of these inspections, should anything be identified. Next slide. Some more on our next steps. We're working on starting a project to inspect the drains at the dam, and the aerial image there showing the blue dots are where some of these drains are located. Those are some of those drains have been in there since the dam was built, so we're just going to be doing camera work, inspecting those, and then coming up with a design for repair and replacement of these feet. I should clarify, this is not the low-level outlet drain. These are other supplemental drains for other features of the dam. But we'll be doing this in coordination with the Safe Dams program and anticipating March 2023 to get this to the state, and then implementation after that. Along with this drain submission, we anticipate to submit stability analysis to Safe Dams as well, to give their concurrence and approval. As the last time it was submitted, there was not a formal approval ever received. There was a back and forth. We addressed all their comments, and there was never a formal letter. So we are looking forward to getting that as well. And we'll submit the stability along with these drain replacement packages. So the other item is spillway design. So pending results of that low-level outlet test, we will move forward with spillway design for long-term upgrades for that structure so it can handle large-scale design storms. The assumption, we're waiting for is making sure that low-level outlet works. If it doesn't, we'll have to come up with a combined approach that will address both spillway and low-level outlet. But we're anticipating that low-level outlet working, but we have contingency plans in place should we need to go another route. So that's my update. It's been a busy year, and we look forward to another busy year, helping ensure Lake Pettit Dam remains safe. And thanks for the opportunity to update you guys on the status of all these projects. I'll turn it back over to Scott.
And we can take questions at the end. So Wes will hang out, and I will yell the questions to him. So we'll do it.
Regis just wanted to see what I was going to say about him. And now the moment two couples have been looking forward to. I want to recognize the two outgoing board members who are completing their term of service. And we know it's not just the board member, it's the spouse as well. Regis and Candace began their terms during a time of turmoil in Big Canoe, and the very first board work session had to be closed to the community at the very last minute. Does anybody remember that one? Because of COVID. It had just taken over. So we have some tokens of appreciation we want to give you all. And first up is going to be Regis and Gail. Not that he's replaceable, but I was his successor on the Finance Committee in 2017. He took some time off, jumped back in the game to run for the board in the fall of 2019, and since then he's been instrumental in bringing about the Creek 9 rejuvenation, the strategic plan, and now the master planning process. And Gail, thanks for all your support along the way, keeping him in line, moving forward. Come on up. So Gail, these will be for you.
Oh,
and you
lovely.
Can get these
Thank you.
later.
Thank you.
And this will be for you. Y'all can come back up here later.
Okay.
And a card. And then we really upped our game this year. We do wine glasses in addition to the wine buckets.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, most people don't realize that I am kind of an emotional person, and I remember on the occasion of my retirement from my paying job, I was asked to say a few words at my going away party, and I kind of became somewhat emotional and even choked up. I assure you that's not going to happen today. No, I would, it's been a good experience, and I don't want to stand up here and spend a lot of time. I've said enough for the past 3 years. You don't want to listen to me anymore, but I would like to thank people. First and foremost, my wife, my trusted advisor and confidant over the past 3 years. I don't know what we're going to talk about at the dinner table and dog walks anymore, but we'll come up with something. Yeah. I'd also like to thank the fellow board members that I've worked with over the past 3 years, and importantly, the committee members, those volunteers that kind of serve in the background that are so instrumental to the governance of Big Canoe. I'd like to thank employees, certainly Scott and his senior staff, Lydell and Carrie. Kathy, didn't have a chance much to work with you, and Jane. And also those people like Trina, who I served with on the architectural committee, as well as people like Jason and Matt from IT, who would have to help me update my password every couple of weeks because I'd forget it, and Mark and Kat Dye from communications. I'd also like to thank the property owners that I had occasion to work with over the past 3 years. And those random occurrences, and this happens more than you'd think, where somebody comes up to you, usually this was at the fitness center, and they would say, hey, do you serve on the board? And I'd kind of say, well, yeah. And they'd just say, well, I'd like to thank you for your service. So those people, I don't know who they are, but it is certainly appreciated. And finally, I'd like to say that, I think sitting here through today's presentation, it's obvious that Big Canoe is in a much better place today than it was 3 years ago. I'm not taking credit for that, but I would like to think that I was in some way a part of it. I congratulate Mark and Terry upon their election, and I'm sure 3 years from now, they will be able to say the same thing. So thank you all very much.
Next, Candace and Mike Robertson. Candace has been and Mike have been a property owner for 25 years. And after retiring, she was able to donate her time and talents to the POA. Since being on the board, she headed up the CCF Capital Contribution Fee Work Group, was twice treasurer of the POA and president in 2021, and was a major contributor to the Access to Capital project earlier this year. Mike, thank you for lending us candy to us as well. Thank you again for your service. Come on up. We've got, goodness, this is easy for you to take. But y'all can come back and get the flowers.
Having served as First Lady, I really thought
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't know that I can add anything more than what Regis has already said, other than just to say I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with everything he just stated. I have certainly gained a wealth of knowledge since joining the board in March of 2020, and after living in Big Canoe for almost 25 years, by 2020, I had also just was in the process of completing leadership Big Canoe, but there were aspects of governing and operations of Big Canoe that are sometimes difficult to fully ascertain as a property owner. So it's been a tremendous pleasure and an honor to serve Big Canoe in the role that I've had for the last 3 years. And I'm also very happy to still be a property owner in Big Canoe. So, thanks.
Okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting and go to Q&A. Thank you all for hanging in there. A couple board members are going to go around with some microphones. When it's your turn, state your name, your lot number, and your question, and you have the universal 3 minutes.
Way in the back.
Do we have a question? Okay. I see something back there. Right here.
Thank you. Tom Durbin, 39 Scotty Knoll Drive. On behalf of Beth and I, we would just like to sincerely thank and applaud the tens of thousands of hours that have been put in by the board, GM, staff, leadership, Long Range Planning Committee. It shows. In the 5 years we've been here, since then to now, the look, the feel, the direction is strikingly different. And we thank you and applaud.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead.
Which
Tom.
one? Hi,
Okay.
my name is Dean Golden. I live in Equestrian neighborhood, lot number 9008. I've been here since 2009 on a part-time basis and full-time since 2013. My question, I'm a retired civil engineer. In my early years in the electric utility industry, I got involved in hydro dams, even in ash pond design, which are earthen. So I have an experience in dealing with leaky dams. My question is on your design of your, do you have a backup plan if you're trying to bring down the level of the water level in an emergency situation, to put like an inverted siphon over the spillway to get more water out earlier or quicker?
So there's, Wes didn't go through all this because we've talked about it a couple times before. There's two main requirements from Georgia Safe Dams. One is you need to be able to drain 2/3 of the volume of the lake within 10 days. We are very comfortable that the lower level outlet, which, and for those of you who didn't maybe hear all this over the last 2 years, lower level outlet is a pipe. It's 100 feet down at the base of the dam. It's got a iron gate that slides across the opening. It goes into a 800-foot conduit that then comes out right at the bottom there by Playfield Park. The gate is opened by a mechanism that goes up to a vault where there's a crank. This is not high tech. There's a crank right by the flag that's on top of the dam. we did a dive, and a dive here is a big deal. It's 100 feet down. There's a decompression chamber. It's not like I'll just jump in the water. They did a dive. They inspected the whole linkage. There was a couple missing bolts they replaced. There's a really high probability that we can open the sluice gate. So if we were ever seeing an issue come where there's going to be this 41 inches of rain in a very short amount of time or something like that, we would be able to open the gate and the water would flow through the pipe and out. The big concern we have is we're not sure we can close it. And you don't want to open the gate if you're not sure you can close it, because now you can't put divers down because they'll get sucked into that pipe and die, honestly. So all the people we're working with, that's where that plug comes in that Wes was showing. The idea is before you open the gate to test it, you put a plug inside the dam, 100 feet in, and you seal that pipe, and now you can test it, exercise the gate. That's what we are going to be doing in February with another dive team that goes down there. They just need to do a preliminary inspection next week to size where that plug goes and how it's going to mount and things like that. There is a backup plan, though. In our operating manual that Wes was talking about, we do have siphon systems designed. We do have access to very large diesel pumps and things like that. You would be able to get a good portion of the volume out of the lake, but the sluice gate is the right answer, and that's the one we want to get working. That helps.
A follow-up on that, the survey you did this year to calculate precisely the volume is basically reduce the volume, so doesn't that affect, it'll increase your factor of safety for the design?
It does. That's part of why it was that bathymetric thing, and again, that sounds so technical, but it's actually having a boat with LiDAR, and we actually map the undersea contours of Lake Pettit. So for the first time in history, Georgia Safe Dams knows how much water is truly, and we know how much water is truly behind there. So we use that new volume to run the new inundation map, which is then part of the emergency action plan, so we know which structures are, affected in the catastrophic failure of a dam or something like that. So, and that is all going to be used as part of the design. And to your point, it's actually slightly more water than what had been surveyed by Geosyntec years ago, used topographic maps that we had from 1972 and estimated, and the bathymetric is a little bit higher than that, but it's significantly lower than what Georgia Safe Dams had on their record, and they could never explain to us where that number came from. So we went and got it.
Thank you.
Sure.
John, what's next? Thanks for being patient.
Here. Thank you. My name is John Herzler, lot 3216. My wife, Ruth, and myself have lived in Big Canoe now for going on 20 years. We've seen a number of general managers come and go. So my comments basically are for you, Scott. Having served on the Audit and Risk Management Committee and also on the Long Range Planning Committee, and as a 2020 graduate of leadership, Big Canoe, you're the first general manager that has aggressively pursued a solution with respect to the issues of the Lake Pettit Dam, along with Geosyntec, our consultants. We're finally doing something about a problem that is 50 years old and should have been done quite some time ago. I'm thankful to the gentleman that preceded me because he asked questions a lot more eloquently than I could have. So my question basically is, we've identified a cost for next year of some $2.1 million, and my assumption is that's dealing primarily with the lower level outlet and whether it can be tested properly, and again, fingers crossed, hope for the best. Planning for the worst, to me, would be a plan B in the following year, which we've put a number of some $3.2 million out, we think. That being the case, the only concern that I've got is that during the financial presentation, we showed that as replacement costs, 2.1 some million.
Yep.
And yet you stated that actually those funds were in the master plan and had not been moved. So as we sit as a community to analyze and vote on the master plan, shouldn't legitimately those numbers come out so we know exactly what we're dealing with? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So Regis and I have talked multiple times with the Long Range Planning Committee. We're not going to ask the community to go to a vote on anything for the long range plan until we have a very solid understanding of the dam repair profiles. So for example, if we do the test in the middle of February and we find that with some lubrication and change a couple linkages, we can exercise that sluice gate beautifully, and Georgia Safe Dam says, yep, got it, great, then all of a sudden that $2.1 million can now be put into a spillway project, and we've already got $3 million the following year reserved. We don't need $5 million for a spillway project. So all of a sudden you just freed up a couple $1 million potentially, which can go into the master plan, the clubhouse, the post office, all the other things. We can't ask any of us to vote on that plan until we understand this guy behind us. So basically that's why we have the schedule we have. So we're kind of running parallel paths right now. We will educate the community on the master plan. We'll talk about the amount that the architect thinks various projects may cost. We'll show you, we'll do the focus groups, we'll get the feedback. All that activity will happen in first quarter. Meanwhile, Wes and I are figuring out what we got to do on the dam, and we will bring both of those things together in second quarter and be able then to talk intelligently and not say, well, what if this happens and this happens? We'll know. So hang in there. Good question. We're about 3 months away from answering it.
Any other questions? Oh, I do see one hand over in the right.
My name is Jeff Ham. I'm a relatively new resident, not quite 2 years, and I too am a retired civil engineer. And I just have one basic question for Wes and Geosynth, that typically earthen dams are designed for a minimum factor of safety of 1.5 for stability. And I'm just curious what our number is here for this dam.
Higher. Can Wes hear that, Mark, at all?
I could hear my name. I couldn't hear the question, no.
The question, Wes, was typically an earthen dam is designed with a 1.5 factor of safety. Do we know what ours is?
Yes. The analysis, well, can you hear me first?
Yes, you're great.
The analysis done and previously submitted to Safe Dams program had a factor of safety just above 1.5. I think it was 1.54. The seismic was even higher than that, actually. But they for the steady state seepage condition and for the seismic conditions that were run and submitted at that time, they exceeded the state's requirements for factor of safety.
And when Wes talked about stability, this is one of these mysteries of the past where back 20 years ago, Georgia Safe Dam started talking to Big Canoe and the board at that time about stability calculations and seismic calculations and things. I think largely not because there was a problem, but because nobody had the designed parameters. They'd gotten lost in history. So Geosynth got involved, did core samples, put piezometers, which measure water pressure inside the dam, ran all these calculations, submitted them to Georgia Safe Dams, and it was crickets. And so we actually have approached Georgia Safe Dams to say, when we submit these new design drawings and stuff, we'd like to resubmit all the stability calculations, because we'd love to get a letter from you once and for all saying you're good. And then we can get rid of all the fake news and misinformation and all the stuff that floats around and say, no, we got it's good. So we took the action to go to Georgia Safe Dams to say, we'd like you to once and for all review the calculations and tell us that we're okay.
Anybody else? Bonnie? Hey.
Good morning. I did owe the comments. Thank you all so much for all of your work, and this has been a great meeting. My name is Bonnie East. My husband Jeff and I have been in Big Canoe for 7.5 years. My question is a huge digression from the dam, and it is about the use of the chimneys. I am spearheading the new Big Canoe Community Theater and Performing Arts program. And I would like to ask you all if it's possible to consider the use of the chimneys as perhaps the future new performing arts, visual and performing arts venue for the Big Canoe community.
So it's a big building, and it's empty for the most part. And believe it or not, we're getting a lot of requests to start to use it because people can't get meeting space when they want it. I know this sounds familiar. We've talked about this before. But we are allowing, groups are starting to use the chimneys again for small things. If they can't get in the lodge, if they can't get in the clubhouse, if they can't get in the beach club, especially this time of year. So I don't see why not, but you and I should talk about that. I hate having buildings just sit here. That's terrible.
Thank you. I'll give you a call.
Okay, perfect.
Anybody else? Wow. Long meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you guys
very
so
much for hanging in there.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.